Okay, Father Moo back again with another quick and dirty modular synth tip going out to the congregation out there. Thanks for tuning in. I'll admit it. This is a very simple tip today. If you are a beginner, this could be useful to you. If you are a medium level user or a high level user, you may be saying, Father Moo, that's just too basic for its own good. Well, we were all beginners one time. We all have to learn the basics. And it's something, I don't think anyone ever taught me this one. I think I might have figured this out before I even got to modular synths on my own, music journey. But we all got to get there sometime. And once you add this to your repertoire, it really opens things up in terms of, I think, freeing yourself from the standard sort of approach to percussion. So let's look at my very simple, quick and dirty tip today. Another incredibly simple patch. We have a clock generator over here. He's at 110 BPM. He's sending the 4 pulses per bar out to event sequencer 1 and to 2. And they are both looped and doing 16 steps. The first channel is controlling, you can see here, kick 3. Second channel is controlling snare 3. And the first channel of the second sequencer is controlling cymbal 3. So let's just unmute these to hear them. Here's the kick. Okay, and here's the snare. You can see them there. And here's the hi-hat. Let's turn that down a tad. Okay, so that's a pretty straightforward and simplistic little pattern there. And different people have different sequencers arranged with different amounts of outputs. Mine only have 2, but my system lets me build as many as I want, which is great. So my incredibly simple tip for today is just looking at the amount of steps in Event Sequencer 2. My tip to you is if you make a pattern like this and you feel things are getting a little bit on the boring side, try experimenting with the number of steps in one of the sequencers. I'm going to leave the first sequencer alone, and it's going to loop on 16, and this kick and snare pattern won't change. But what I am going to do is I'm going to switch from 16 steps to 15 on the sequencer controlling the hi-hat, which will then mean that this step, 16, never gets played, which means the sequencer will drift out of time with the kick and the snare. It's still controlled by the same master clock, but because it's shorter, it will loop more often, and it'll take about 15 or 16 bars before it loops around to being in time again. So let's just do that now from 16 steps to 15, and listen. So the pattern has already changed relative to the kick and the snare. See what I mean? So there's a lot of variation that has been introduced into this incredibly simple little sequence just by removing that step from the sequencer. In fact, it doesn't have to be 15. You could also go to 17 and have pretty much the same effect. So is that a very, very simple thing to do? Yes. Could you have done that yourself, maybe even by accident? It's entirely possible. But if you approach it from a drum programming point of view, I think it's quite interesting. For example, you may have things called semi-random step generators, so you may have Euclidean pattern generators in your modular system. I'm thinking about things like Ornament and Crime, and also Pamela's Workout probably has both of those things. I have Grids as a sequencer from Mutable, and Grids has a secondary mode, which is a Euclidean mode, where it can shoot out those random patterns. or they're not random. They're following a complex math algorithm. So we're not following a complex math algorithm here. We're just setting up the fraction of 17 over 16 or 15 over 16 and letting those different patterns loop around one another. But I find you get a lot of the variation in electronic music that is taking you away from the repetitive sort of techno pattern and giving you something which is maybe more in aphex territory or in experimental music or something like that. So there's a lot of ways to, there's almost so many ways to apply this. I would say experiment with it in your different setups. If you're not programming drum sounds but programming synth sounds, experimenting with the number of steps in your sequencer can also be very interesting. I would usually leave one on the boring old 16-step pattern and have the other one on 15 or 17. If you put it on 20, it'll loop around more regularly, so it'll be less all over the place, or they'll sync up more often. And if you want them to sync up even more often, you could set it to 24. But you have the freedom to put whatever number you want in that little box. So yes, a very, very simple little trick. And to many of you out there, it may not be old news, but if it's helpful to you, I'm happy to go down to this this is the building blocks, really, of rhythmic construction. But we shouldn't ignore it. We shouldn't stick to always trying to replicate standard Western scales and patterns in our music and give ourselves a little freedom with 16 over 17 or 15 over 16. And if anyone asks you what you're doing, you just tell them, I'm doing math rock, because Father Moo told me to. And you'll get away with it, I promise, every time. Thank you so much for tuning in. More short tips coming up in the future. Peace.